Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. So I wanted to recap the ECL here, and unfortunately, because I was, not gonna lie, pretty salty when I lost, maybe not salty is the right word, but just upset with myself, didn't save either of the replays. So to supplement that, I've got a few of the practice games here. We're going to talk about Game 1 first. This is actually, unfortunately, the only replay that I had saved from my practice sessions. I had quite a few practice sessions using this specific build against Norsca. So let's kind of talk about things a little bit here. Obviously, we've got the hero squad. Can help hunt down big monsters and mammoths and such. Norgrimling's Ironbreakers give them kind of a good meat shield. A very good meat shield, actually. They're not at all a meat shield. They're more like a metal shield. We've got some Slayers here. A couple units of Quarrelers. Dragonback Slayers as well. Lots of Miners. Some with blasting charges, some without. And yeah, the Gyrocopter, 2 of them, and the Bomber, of course. As for my opponent's build on this battle, this was just a quick battle I was practicing on, but still, we've got a couple of Marauder Horsemen throwing axes here. They're an okay answer for the Gyros, but I will be able to outrange them pretty significantly. It's also got Wulfric on a Mammoth here, Balefiend, Lord of Shadows, Ice Trolls. We've got Marauders up front here, some Berserkers, and some Javelins as well. So my opponent, definitely expecting Gyrocopters here, brought these Javelins to try and counter them, is what it looks like, but we'll see. Over here, I'm just doing some skirmishing, kind of dealing with these Marauder Horsemen, trying to kite them back towards my own missiles, my Quarrelers here, and then maybe get some good counterfire on them. Not taking too much damage on the Gyros right now, so I'm not too worried about it. Meanwhile, this unit of Marauder Horsemen that had been routed off by the Gyros and Rangers earlier, or sorry, the Quarrelers, is going to go ahead and get dropped here, but I need to be careful not to take too many Javelins here from these Hunters. They will do a lot of damage to the Gyro Bombers. So you can see I'm just cutting and running there, trying to dodge a few of those shots, going to get out of their range as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, the Norscan player approaching here, he is going to just kind of march straight up into the pipe, which, if you guys go back and watch my Ever-Chosen games, which I highly recommend you do, you'll see that Aerocrastic kind of pulled up obliquely, kind of on the flank here, and like crashed in with his monsters all on one side, rather than just taking a frontal advance like this, which is obviously a much smarter play. Running in on a frontal advance like this means you're going to take just facefuls of blasting charges. So here go the Dowie, giving a good toss there, and just exploding those Marauders very cost effectively. And yeah, because of the way Arrow engaged there on my flank, like I really didn't get the opportunity to use many of my blasting charges, so that was excellent play by him. Back to this battle, Ice Trolls are weak to fire. They are the weakest to fire of any unit in the game, coming in at like 48% weakness to fire, I believe, 45. So yeah, because the Brimstone Goods do anti-large and fire damage, they're going to do massive amounts to these Ice Trolls here. The back line, we've got a very nicely overcast Pit of Shades here. You don't get to see this guy too often these days. And it looks like the boat also being cast through. It does look like it makes okay contact with those Ironbreakers there. Mostly does more damage to the Quarrelers than anything, but Mammoth is getting engaged now. You can see here the Hunters not really focused on the Gyros for the time being, so I'm going to move up and just bomb them out a little bit here. Doesn't seem like they have got an attack order on anything in particular. But yeah, we're just kind of chilling back with the Slayers in reserve for now, letting the frontline troops kind of fight it out. And you can see I'm trying to keep my 2 heroes, or my 3 heroes, I should say, matched up on Wulfric on the Mammoth here. Obviously, the Slayer King and Gotrek will be able to do some great anti-large AP. So you can see we're kind of pulling back to safety here, trying to pull the Mammoth away from his infantry support and get in for a side and rear charge here. And once these 3 get the Mammoth isolated and they start doing a bunch of damage, you can see here that, yeah, it was just a lot for the Mammoth to deal with. He starts to take damage very, very quickly. Likewise, the Gyro Bomber is going to be able to get into a position now where it's free to fire. The Copters are just chasing off those Ice Trolls, making sure they don't regenerate too much. But yeah, you can see just in the time that I was zoomed away there, Wulfric took a ton of damage from these, these 3 heroes here. The Slayers also getting in here, and the Brimstone Guns. So just goes to show how quickly you can kill a Mammoth with this squad. Going back to the Ever-Chosen game, if you notice on that replay, I made a pretty big mistake. I thought I had clicked my hero squad onto Wulfric on the Mammoth, but I actually clicked them onto Chariot, one of the casters that was on a Chariot. Aerocrastic had brought, what was it, 2 Death Chariot, 2 Death Chariots, Death Casters on Chariots with different spells, and then Wulfric was also on a Chariot. And then for the Mammoth, he had the Regiment of Renown, which has the damage resistance buff. Obviously makes it a lot more tanky against potential burst fire or like this triple hero squad here. But if you notice, I pathed my hero squad after one of the death chariots, and they ended up way outside of the pocket. Whereas if they had been stuck to the Mammoth, the Soul Crusher, from the beginning of that fight when it was kind of coming in on the flank, if I had had them all on him, we probably could have taken him out pretty quick. Once that self buff wore off, then I think we could have taken down the Mammoth with the 3-hero squad. Ultimately, that was the biggest misplay by me. I mean, obviously, the double Feral Manscore was a big problem for me, and I ended up making some micro mistakes with my my gyro bomber and copters because of them. But even still, I think I had a pretty good shot to win that one. If I had just been able to... Well, I did get a little unlucky with some of the gyro shots missing the Manscores on the initial approach. And then the Manscores, I was having a hard time getting them to enrage into my ground targets, which was kind of my intention. Because if you can get them to enrage, in theory, you can drop them onto a ground target, and then, they'll just get killed by Slayers or something, right? But it didn't end up working out that way in practice, unfortunately. We just couldn't get enough damage in on the Manscores to get them enraged effectively, so that ended up being, a bit of a rough situation. But even beyond that, had I microed Gotrek, Felix, and Ungrim better in that Everchosen battle, I do think that we could have had a similar result to here. Obviously, I do think Arrow's build is quite a bit better than Martin's here. No offense to Martin, I mean, this is okay, but the double chariots, the triple chariots, I should say, are absolutely super, super strong, and it's way hard for the Dwarves to deal with that many single model chariots, especially when Manscores are chasing your options, which normally would deal with them very well. Because, I mean, if you can catch Wulfric on a chariot out in the open with the gyro bomber, like 1 or 2 volleys will do more than half his HP in damage. Granted, he doesn't need to have to be basically stationary, so granted, Arrow was doing a great job of keeping him moving, which is what you need to do with chariots. You have to keep them moving constantly. As a result, like you can see if you watch that replay, I got some pretty good damage in on Wulfric on the chariot, but I wasn't able to finish him off. Just because he was so mobile there. So, yeah, a little bit of a tough break for me on that matchup. I definitely felt like I had a pretty good chance going into it, but, it just ended up kind of going the way that it goes, and I definitely think this build has a lot of merit. I just sort of misplayed it there. I think I did change it up slightly as well for the Invitational. I may have changed some things slightly. Maybe I changed these Slayers out for Dwarf Warriors. And honestly, the secondary unit of Slayers would have been really nice to have in that situation because of the chariots and the Mammoth, obviously. But yeah, as for this actual battle, pretty good kills on the Ironbreakers. Corlers also did their job of kind of helping support the gyros. The Bomber doesn't show a lot of kills, but it did get a lot of work done against some high-value targets. Of course, the Hero Squad also does some great work as well. Slayers doing their thing. From my opponent's side, the Berserkers able to get some good kills in certain situations. 63 kills on Wulfric himself. Obviously, the Ice Trolls were a huge mistake there, and the Javelins didn't end up doing their job, which was to take out the Gyrocopters. So that was a bit rough for the Norscan side. I mean, the throwing axes, I think they're okay for countering gyros. I just don't think that they necessarily have the range and speed to really dictate that engagement. Like, you're probably just going to get pulled back to Dwarf missile support, so it's a bit rough there. But it's definitely an interesting matchup. So if we go ahead and have a look here, just to kind of remind you guys more of what Arrow took against me here. We had, I believe, Wulfric on the chariot, and I could be getting some of these specifics here about the abilities wrong, but I believe it was just Death Sorcerer on a chariot with maybe only Spirit Leech, and I think, did the other have maybe Purple Sun or something? I can't remember exactly, but it was something to this effect here. With these guys, plus then the Soul Crusher. Again, that Soul Crusher has that Enrage ward save for 22 seconds, so it would have held up a lot better than Wulfric did in this particular battle that I just showed you here. That Enrage definitely would have helped quite a bit against that hero squad, but even still, once that wore off, I think that Gotrek and Ungrim and Felix, had I been actually focused on taking out the Mammoth, maybe it would have turned out differently. I mean, granted, the Chariots, I mean, they were going to run around and do tons of damage anyway, regardless of what I did with the rest of my army, because I really didn't, I mean, short of like charging them with the gyros, which is a terrible idea, I don't really have any way of stopping them up because I didn't bring any runes or like Grombrindle. In hindsight, maybe it would have been better to take Grombrindle over Ungrim and just take him with the Smoke Bomb. In that build, I had just Ungrim with no spells or abilities, or obviously no spells, but no abilities here, so he was super cheap, right? Only 1250 for an Unbreakable Lord, has good combat stats, anti-large AP, pretty decent overall. Let's see here. Grombrindle is going to be more expensive if you take him with the Flash Bomb, but just with the Flash Bomb he comes in at 1563, which, I mean, that speed debuff and especially the melee defense debuff could be really nice. I mean, granted, typically you're not looking for your melee damage from Dwarves, but I mean, if you've got Grombrindle in there plus Gotrek, I mean, obviously they are going to be quite strong together, and yeah, the extra melee defense lowering. I mean, Gotrek already has really good melee attacks, so it'll pretty much guarantee that he gets hits, and again, that speed debuff means that they'll be able to keep up with targets as well, so maybe I could have done some things differently, potentially from a build standpoint, but I think, again, the build I had would have worked, I think, much better if I had played it correctly, but definitely made some pretty serious mistakes there, which, you know, it happens to the best of us. It's all good at the end of the day, so hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this. Sorry I didn't have the actual replay to show you guys, but again, I was pretty disappointed and kind of angry at myself after I lost, so I totally forgot to save the replay. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.